have a request on the floor from our guest speaker to allow this to be public. Now, I could stop the recording when Stephen's finished his formal presentation and restart it when you're discussing, if you would like. Otherwise, this is not a shy group, so they may be fine with that. I don't want to anticipate your answers, but I do respect your privacy. So if there is anything that anyone is worried about, we can stop it once the presentation is over. Is there anyone with a concern? Please open your mic or raise your hands. Okay. We are good to go. Stephen, I can't thank you enough for coming. I am going to introduce you briefly, but I wonder, well, I think it's important that we give everybody a chance to say something so they're warmed up to ask you questions. So I'm going to go to my people list here. So if you want to see when you're going to be called on, I assume the people list is in the same order each time. So once they've all said, let's each say one sentence about who we are. Maybe a long sentence, but try to keep it short so we don't miss any time with Stephen. And I'll start by saying, Stephen, I've known you for some time. You probably don't remember because you were a very famous keynote speaker in fall of 2008 in Barcelona for the Eden Research Workshop. And that's when I first met you, but we've run into each other since then. I'm a professor in open digital and distance education at Athabasca University. This is my 24th year. And now I'm going to go to Cassie and ask her to say hello.
Hello,
tell us who
Stephen.
you are.
Hello, everybody else. I'm Cassie. And I guess I'll just let everybody know. I know I let our chat group know the winds are about 80 kilometers an hour outside right now, and about half our town has lost power. So if I disappear, I lost power.
We'll know
That's
why.
about me right now.
And
That's
Cassie,
also happening here, by the way, so just so you know.
so Cassie, where is here and what do you do other than be a graduate student?
I am in Waterford, Ontario, so about an hour and a half south of Toronto. And I am a gender-based violence framework coordinator for CAN, a Community Alliance and Networking, an Indigenous organization that's national, but working our way into international waters.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, Galera. Thank you, Cassie.
Hello. Nice to see everybody and Dr. Downs as well. I am an educator. I work with University of Toronto as a learning consultant, and I work with faculty. I'm saying hello at 4 a.m. from Istanbul. So if I'm not speaking loudly, that's because everybody's asleep here, and lovely to be here.
Thank you. Hey, Young.
Just for the record, I miss Istanbul. It's a wonderful city. Also, for the record, not a doctor. So when you all graduate, you will be more qualified than me to talk about this.
Oh, my.
Thank you, Mari, introducing me. My name is Hyung Park, Stephen. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm wearing lots of hats. I'm a professional Canadian immigration consultant. I'm a subject matter expert and mentor in my association. And then I have a lot of volunteers working as a facilitation. It means the English conversation group facilitator. And also I'm a part of the online education implementation scheduler and helping how to smooth online program go smoothly. And I'm a board member. That's why I'm so happy working for the people who make better life. Thank you so much for coming to here. Yep.
Thank you, Heyang. Kate.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kate. I am in Whistler right now in BC, and just like a couple of others, I have a hard time with Teams on my MacBook. So I'm on Teams on my phone, and then I have my MacBook open to Notes, it's really challenging to use Teams on the MacBook for some reason. But I am happy to be here with all of you. Professionally, I teach yoga online, so I'm a curriculum developer, and I run my own online yoga instruction business, which trains prospective yoga teachers.
When we
Wow.
started, Marty, they were saying things like, you can never do things like teach yoga online. You have to be there in person. Remember
That's
that.
true. It's true. And now we can do darn near anything. Thank you,
Mhm.
Kate. Kimberly.
Hello from Alberta. I'm a seasoned K-12 teacher, and I've been an administrator, and I'm also a content development and an Indigenous liaison. And I work with Métis Nation of Alberta, and we work to support our learners online as well.
Thank you. Wow, we have an amazing
Mhm.
range of expertise. Nicole.
Hi, everyone. I am currently on Vancouver Island, but I generally reside in Edmonton, Alberta, and I work for a senior serving nonprofit organization there. I do strategy and research and special projects and that kind of stuff. And I'm also a tutor for Athabasca University as well. Yeah, that's me.
I used
Thank
to do
you.
that many years ago. I was an Athabasca University tutor.
It's fun
Mhm.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great place to
Hey, I
work.
did it for 7 years, and yeah, it was like the huge break for me as far as making a career is concerned. So, yeah,
Wow.
I've
We'd love to have you
lots.
back. You can come back and tutor for us
Yeah.
in our department. Or you should be in Edmonton, or sorry, in education. You were in computer science before,
No,
right?
I was in philosophy.
Oh, that's right. Your first degree is philosophy. Good. That's wonderful. Thank you. That was Nicole. And now Stephanie.
Hey, hi. I am a registered nurse and I am in Kimberley, BC, which is near Cranbrook, BC. I don't know if you know where that is. Yeah. So
Been there
I
many
teach.
times.
Oh, great. Okay. So I teach nursing at College of the Rockies and currently I'm a program coordinator for the BSN program. I work on curriculum and evaluation with UVic and college partners for the nursing program. And I actually first reached out to you a couple years ago in the first course in this program with Wen and Rayhan, and we asked you why we should care about MOOCs. And so you created a little video for us. I don't know if you recall, and it's on your YouTube channel. So it's nice to see you again.
Thank you so much. What a creative, for both of you, very brave and creative. Thank you
When
so
people
much.
say they reached out to me, and my heart jumps to my throat and think, please say you. I answered. Please say I answered. I do try to answer every such request I get.
And you're
Sometimes
very
I forget.
fast.
I try to be. If I'm not fast, it'll be like a year later. So I have
Oh,
to be
dear.
fast.
Svea.
Hi, I'm Svea, and I live very close to Stephanie. I'm in Nelson, BC, and I'm also a registered nurse. I still work in clinical practice as a clinical consultant for wound care, and then I also teach distance education online for my wound care specialty. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you, Svea. Rob, are you still with us?
I'm still here. Thank you. Stephen, I'm a big fan. And in fact, my first degree is in philosophy as well. Perhaps we can talk about it later.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I'm currently in the ferry lineup, going back to the lower mainland from Vancouver Island. So my apologies if I do drop. I will be sure to review the recorded video later. These days, I'm working in a private community college setting and working towards building a degree and receiving consent from the ministry for offering that post-secondary degree.
Wonderful. You're a very busy guy, like all our participants here. Tara.
Hello. I used to live about 45 minutes from Cassie, and I'm a new resident to Kelowna, BC, about 3.5 weeks ago. So I do not miss those power outages, Cassie. You can have all of those all you want. So I moved to Kelowna, BC, for a job, and I'm a pharmacy educator with a public institution. So far, it is very, very stunningly beautiful over here.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you all for telling us some things about yourselves. And I just want to quickly welcome Stephen again and say, it says on his wonderfully designed website that he wants to visualize and aspire a system of society and learning where each person is able to rise to his or her fullest potential without social or financial encumbrance. So you're speaking from my heart as well there, Stephen. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell us a little more about yourself, and then over to you to present whatever you would like to us about the field, anything you want to say about leadership, and then leave us some time for questions so that the group can participate in including things that they're particularly interested in. Thank you again. Welcome.
Thank you. I've got slides, so I'll show you some slides and I'll show you some stuff. I'll talk about the announcement that I did this afternoon, which was a big event in my life, although not so many other people's, but that's the way of the world. So yeah, I used to tutor for Athabasca University. I was a tutor for Mary Richardson in the philosophy department, and I did critical thinking. Did it for 7 years. It was a big deal for me, opened a lot of doors. I ended up moving to Northern Alberta when I was teaching at Grand Prairie Regional College. I also did some sessional teaching at the University of Alberta. I worked for 4.5 years as a distance education and new instructional media design specialist at Assiniboine Community College in Brandon, Manitoba. Still have fond memories of Brandon. I worked as an internet architect, information architect for the University of Alberta Faculty of Extension for a while, and then in 2001, after a 3-month secondment in Melbourne, Australia, I moved to Moncton, New Brunswick to work with the National Research Council in the newly formed e-learning research group. That's changed names a bunch of times, and I'm now part of the Digital Technology Research Center. And I'm relocated now, I guess, for about 7 or 8 years from Moncton to a small town outside Ottawa, between Ottawa and Montreal, called Castlemaine, Ontario, which is pretty close to where I grew up in Metcalfe, Ontario. It's funny living all over the country and then coming back and just 40 kilometers from where I grew up. Although I was born in Montreal and je suis Québécois, but my background and native language is English. So go figure. So that's me in a nutshell. I've done lots of stuff with NRC and in e-learning generally. I started off on learning objects with George Siemens. We developed the world's first massive open online course and did that a bunch of times. I've been involved in the philosophy / learning theory called connectivism, which will make its appearance here because it's topical and relevant to what we're talking about. Also, I was a program leader for the learning and performance support system. So I did some of that horrible management stuff. And they ran me through a whole pile of management training courses. So, sorry, just kidding. Just having fun at your expense. So I'm still working with NRC. I did a lot of work on ethics and AI, a lot of work on AI generally, and I'm currently a member of NRC's Research Ethics Board. So I'm one of the people that have to get their proposals by. Sorry, just kidding. It's been a long day and a crazy week. So I hope you'll forgive me if I go off on tangents or appear distracted or whatever. It really has been one of those weeks. And so anyhow, but the Senators won last night and I'm happy. So I said I had slides. I won't violate that promise. I've got a bunch of things I can talk about, but I want to preface that by saying I'm here for you, for your benefit, not for my benefit, which means this presentation's in your hands, not in my hands. So if you want to interrupt me at any time, ask a question, disagree with me, tell me that I'm a communist, whatever, feel free. Absolutely, I do encourage you to jump in. This isn't about me, this is about the ideas, and so I warmly welcome any engagement. But if you just want to sit back and listen, that's cool too. And I find a lot of people feel like that's what they'd like to do, and then they feel uncomfortable because they feel they should be interested. Don't worry about it. Whatever you do is fine. All good? All right. Let's share. Looking for the share button. There it is. It's different, of course, in every single thing. Include sound. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. If, oh yeah, I guess I can. All right, so you should be seeing the slideshow. Are you seeing it as slides or okay?
You're in presentation now.
Okay, why did it? Oh, okay, there we go. So the very highfalutin title on AI and leadership management. Okay, oh, well, it's not going to matter which way I'm facing because you're seeing mostly the slides anyways. AI in leadership and project management in distance education. I ripped the title off from the name of your course because I have no imagination. So, and here's the setting of the context. What leadership approach provides maximum support for the exploration and appropriate implementation of AI in education? There's tons of stuff packed into that, I know. But the answer, of course, is none. Thank you. That was no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, right? I mean, we don't think there's just going to be one leadership approach that applies to everything. Different approaches for different scenarios, different contexts, different people, different environments. Of course. I mean, I wouldn't. Never mind. I won't go with the examples, but you get the idea that you could use really inappropriate leadership approaches in different contexts. You know, let's have kindergarten as a formal business meeting. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, I did come up with an example. So here's kind of what I have in mind. Talk a little bit about what AI is. I imagine you all have a sense of what AI is. Everybody in the world has been talking about it for the last 2-3 years. Others have been talking about it for the last 30-40 years. So I'm probably not going to be springing anything new on you here. It's to set the context and to set a perspective. A few thoughts about ethics and AI. A little bit about using AI, and that's where I'll talk about some of the stuff that I announced this afternoon. And then finally, what does that all tell us about management? I'm not a management theorist. I've taken some management training programs. That's it. So I'm not going to pretend to know all about management theory. But I can apply what I do know a lot to what little I know about management. But you'll have to take it from there. And that's just the way it is. Oh, I didn't realize it rolled these slides out with the fade ins. I used like a predefined template, and yeah. Okay. It's funny because people, as I'm going along, people are turning off their cameras, and those people who are left, their pictures are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now I've got two people, and you're on the big TV screen in front of me, so you're like life size. But don't all go away. I want to have at least one person. Oh, there we go. Someone's come back. Thank you. Okay, a little bit about AI. AI, this is my definition. I pulled it out of my hat earlier today. AI is the employment of simple mechanisms, and they really are simple mechanisms, in massive arrays to identify patterns in input phenomena, patterns that are ultimately useful to us. Purely my definition, but I really think that kind of captures what it is. It's probably not any kind of definition that you've had in the stuff you've read about AI, but I think it really captures what it is and what it does. People say there's no such thing as AI because computers aren't intelligent yet. That's a silly statement. They were using the term AI, artificial intelligence, in the 1950s when computers were really, really, really stupid. And nobody thought computers were intelligent then. AI is two things. Number one, it is using what we know about human intelligence to try to do the same thing in computers. And number two, it's a research objective. It's where they're trying to go, right? We got to call it the moon mission even before we landed on the moon. And yeah, it was technically correct that it wasn't a moon mission until July 20, 1969. But we called it that because that's what we were trying to do. So it's a perfectly good name. All right, let's talk a little bit about what AI is. I'll begin with GoFi, talk about AI by function, the AI workflow, and then the machine is us. And you probably know this, but I have to underline this because it has so much to do with management. So GoFi stands for good old-fashioned AI. And it was the idea that AI was based on rules and principles and ontologies. I see some nodding there, right? You still see people talking a lot about AI in those terms, but AI is nothing like that anymore. Hasn't been for a long time now. The traditional programming approach, the expert system approach, the rule-based approach was ultimately a failure. It did not work. And there's a variety of reasons why it did not work, but it really spectacularly did not work. Aside, if you are a person who thinks that you can manage by rules, learn from AI. Rule-based approaches do not work. End of aside. Neural networks, and in particular, deep learning, are based on, well, networks of connected nodes or units connected such that a change of state in one can result in a change of state in the other. That's my own technical definition, but it's important to understand. When I talk about connectivism, I'm talking about connections in this sense. And when I talk about network learning, I'm talking about network learning in this sense. Sure, this is a neural network that we use in artificial intelligence, but you can also think of each of the, I'm pointing to the screen, you can't see me point to the screen, but you can think of each of those round circles as a person as well as a node. or as a cricket, or as a bird, whatever. It doesn't have to be computers. But the whole point is there are some very simple mechanisms. I won't go into them, but if you follow that second link there that says how AI works, I describe them, then those very simple mechanisms stacked on top of each other, on top of each other, result in some very interesting and useful behaviors, this pattern recognition that I talked about. I like to talk about different types of AI, not by the architecture of the AI system, as is usually the case, because who knows what the difference is between a convoluted neural net and feed forward back propagate. It doesn't matter, right? What's interesting is the different kinds of things that AI can do. Everybody's been focused on large language models recently. Large language models are interesting, but they're not all of AI. They're just the most recent bit, the very tip of the iceberg. I've broken AI into 6 categories based on different functions. And I feel very proud of this diagram because it came up before there was such a thing as generative AI and ChatGPT and all of that. Back then, they used to talk about 4 different types: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And you can think of them in terms of different questions. Descriptive is what happened. Using AI to describe what happened. Sounds pretty basic, but it is really useful. Diagnostic, what kind of thing is happening? And or what kind of thing happened? You see the pattern recognition there, right? Predictive, what will happen? Prescriptive, make it happen. That's what a lot of learning analytics was based on, prescriptive AI. A little bit of diagnostic, is he going to fail or not? Prescriptive, let's make him pass instead. Everybody's been talking about generative AI, going from the original chat bots to now the large language models, etc. Basically, it's make something new. And the long form is use all the patterns that you've recognized and make a new instance of the same pattern. Notice that's not copying, that's learning. Everybody talks about AI copying stuff, right? That's not copying. If you read 100 books and you learn about the various the rise and fall of the narrative structure in a novel, and then you write your own novel using that structure, you haven't copied 100 books, right? You've read the books, you found a pattern of interest in those books, you created a new instance of that pattern. This copyright business is silliness. Sorry to say it that way, but I don't have a whole lot of time, so. And then finally, hasn't come yet, but it is going to come, what I call deontic analytics or deontic AI. That's AI that tells us what should happen. Not should in the sense of what will probably happen, but should in the sense of what is best. What is the right thing to happen? What ought to happen? And you can make that determination because you can look at the sorts of ethical decisions people have made in the past and then decide, well, this is the sort of ethical decision we should make in the future. Now, again, that's an aside. I guarantee you, we will not like those decisions because if you analyze the ethical decisions that people have actually made in the past, they're very bad. There's a workflow, and the workflow is interesting and useful to the extent that it makes it clear that using AI isn't just pushing a button. Either in the development of AI or in the application of AI, there's a bunch of stuff that happens and is necessarily always going to happen. AI is based on input. You can't do pattern recognition without stuff to recognize patterns in. Pattern recognition inherently requires a perceiver. There's a full philosophical discussion there that we could have. What is knowledge? My answer to the question of what is knowledge, well, the first answer is it's like recognizing your mother in the train station, right? You can't not recognize your mother. Not well, unless you have serious brain injury, but otherwise it's not possible, right? There's no sign that you used to recognize your mother. You didn't look for her characteristic red cap necessarily. You didn't look for the scar on the side of her face. I'm just making that up, right? You just look at the people. And, oh, there's mom, right? And that's knowledge, right? Sometimes say it's like finding Waldo. You know the Where's Waldo things? You look at and what's neat about finding Waldo and Where's Waldo is once you found Waldo, you can't unfind Waldo. You know, it's not possible. That's why it's knowledge, right? That's why we don't just say, well, I believe Waldo is there. Well, you can unthink a belief, but you can't unknow that that's Waldo. That sort of thing. Knowledge is pattern recognition, but pattern recognition in the sense that the phenomena are presented to you and you, as I say, snap to attention. There's Waldo. That's knowledge. There's E equals MC squared. That's knowledge. There's a bear. There's a bear. That's knowledge, right? And it was and is incredibly useful. So that's what AI is doing. That's all AI is doing. That's the whole story. Everything is based on that. And a lot of people will tell you different stories, but if we go back down into the guts of what these systems are doing, that's what they're doing. So you got to get the data. You got to get the right data. You got to use that data, clean that data. Lots of decisions being made there, right? What counts as good, what counts as not good. Interestingly, the same thing happens in the scientific method. Who wrote this? Larry Lawden, I think, talking about the Millikan oil drop experiment. Why did they use oil drops to do the experiment? Because when they used water drops, it didn't work. Oil drops worked great. So that's the data they chose to use. Silly little example, but if you ever look it up, Millikan oil drop experiment. There's a really interesting story in the philosophy of science based on that. So you're picking your data, you're cleaning your data, you're validating your data, and then you're going to train your AI on your data. And this is where learning theory, properly so-called, really comes into play. How do you train your data? There are different mechanisms of train your AI on data. There are different mechanisms of doing it, but basically what you're doing is messing around with the parameters of how units are connected to each other, what the weights of those connections are, how sensitive the neurons are to signals coming through those connections. That's it. There is no constructivism here. There is no pedagogy at all, really. It's all based on weights and all of that, and then how you present the data to the network, how you run it through, how you structure the network, etc. Then you do your predictions, your classifications, you make sure they came out right, because they often come out wrong. And a lot of the times when you're training your AI, it comes out with the wrong prediction, you have to tell it, no, that's the wrong prediction, and you do it again. You go through these cycles, these iterations, as they're called. Once you've got your model trained, you give it some testing data, you test for the predictions, and then you apply it, and you've done your AI project. That's a lot of work. A lot of times we start with the trained AI. Okay, well, that's good. Some billionaire has done that job for us who had no interest in the outcome of the project. And we can use the AI, but we still have to do all the other steps. We still have to try it out. We still have to evaluate whether the predictions came out right. There's still all kinds of stuff that we need to do. It's not push button. Sorry that went on longer than needed, but you all look really interested. So it looks like it was useful. The machine is us. Because the data, especially in large language models, but also in every other kind of AI data, we're providing the data. and large language models especially, are being trained on stuff we said, right? It's not stuff that someone made up and then pretended that we said. No, it's stuff we actually said. So, if you have AI and analytics, and I'm pointing at my slide again, but if you have AI and analytics and it pops out some hate, and we know that it does, there's Tay, the Microsoft racist bot, for example, that's actually us talking, AI recognizing the pattern of hate and then spitting it out. Same thing with care, right? So what goes in determines to a very large extent what comes out. And to the extent that we can impact that, that's also us, right? That's us doing this whole AI workflow thing with data that humans created, and out pops the hate or the care or everything in between. So it's not like this technology can exaggerate things if it's programmed that way, but it doesn't necessarily do so. It can amplify things if it's programmed that way, but it doesn't necessarily do so. It's what we create. It's what we've created as a society. It's what we create in the form of tools. That's not what the AI ethics people always talk about, but it's important to understand that. Yeah, I know, I'm still on part 1 of 4. So let's go to part 2 of 4. People write about the ethics of AI, and you've probably seen it, as though the more than 2,500-year-old question of ethics has been solved. I'm here to tell you, ethics has not been solved. And that's where the danger lies when we start doing AI ethics. Because we get a lot of people who come along and say, here's what AI ethics are. And I look at that and I say, well, I can see your culture in that. I can see your background in that. I can see your percent. Well, what can I see? Let's take a look at what I can see in that. There are different ethical approaches. There are hundreds and hundreds of ethical theories, even more theories of ethics than there are theories of learning, if that's possible. They break down roughly into 5 categories. Most treatments will give you 3 of these 5 categories, which should tell you something right off the bat. The utilitarian approach is based on the consequences of the action. It's based on the idea of creating good, the pursuit of pleasure, the absence of pain, different ways of expressing that, the most good for the most people, or if you're an economist, the most good for the most people at the least cost, because, different accounts of what count as good, different accounts of how we determine what counts as good, is, just frolicking the fields. Is that good? Well, unequivocally, that is good. But it might not be how you want to build your life. John Stuart Mill talked about the lower goods and the higher goods being cultivation of wisdom and reason. Those are good too. The rights approach, we hear that a lot. Ethics is based on rights. The idea of rights is that each person is inherently valuable in and of themselves. It's a principle derived from Immanuel Kant, but we see it expressed in multiple ways. Right? Every person matters. Every child matters. Every life matters. Black lives matter. This is the whole rights-based approach. The rights-based approach also has in it this idea of equality before the law. That's an idea that dates back at least to Solon in ancient Greece. But you see it applied elsewhere. This whole idea that everybody should have the same whatever, but what counts as the same? What's the difference between equality and equity, for example? Important questions. It takes us to the fairness or the justice approach. It's kind of a new approach. Derived from John Rawls in his 1970 book, A Theory of Justice. Rawls bases it on contract theory. And he has this magical mechanism whereby you get everybody together and you ask, what kind of society would you design if you didn't know where you were going to be in that society? And then proceeds to deny the obvious, where everybody assumes that they'd be the one rich person, and goes down the road of, well, I'll probably be one of the poor people. I better design a society that's fair. And so we get this principle of justice as fairness. And you see fairness just littered all over AI ethics. Now, I have nothing against fairness. I think fairness is great. I think John Rawls's theory is hocus pocus. But it is an important idea of ethics as a form of social contract, a way of getting along without killing each other, or maybe better, getting along in the pursuit of some common social goods. But as Rousseau, talking about the common good, said, if you have a small group of people who are in charge of, say, education, they will twist his conception of the common good to mean their own good and not the will of the people. How do you detect the will of the people? Hard question. Do elections do it? So that's the common good approach. There's also the virtue approach, where we define ethics as not in terms of the outcome, not in terms of the process, but in the terms of the quality or the character of the person involved. And that's where we get things like honesty, even caring. That's not necessarily a contractual arrangement, although there is a contractual thing called the duty of care, which is a totally separate thing entirely, probably, maybe, depending on who you talk to. If you talk to Carol Gilligan, no, it's not just a legal principle. It's an important principle of society, or at least a caring society. The whole Olympics ideal, higher, stronger, faster, maybe with a little honesty thrown in, are, again, all virtual characteristics. Now, the reason why I mention all of these things is because ethical theory today is a mishmash of all of them, and they aren't all consistent with each other, and very often they're in collision with each other. And no system based on rules or principles, however derived here, is going to tell you in which order you should apply those rules or principles. What are the bases for making ethical judgments? Does might make right? Vladimir Putin says yes. Yes, it does. So does another orange person that we all know about. Do ethics describe duties? Is a moral responsibility, is that something that you are therefore required to do? Under the law, there are duties, but there are duties mostly only through your own choice. If you decide to enter into a profession and become licensed, then you begin to have some duties. But if you're a baby, you don't have duties. Never mind. I won't go there. That was bad. That was bad even for me. You get the idea, right? I mean, do ethics create obligations? A lot of people like to say, well, there are rights and there are responsibilities, right? Well, okay, what if I don't fulfill these responsibilities? Have I thereby lost my rights? Are rights conditional on responsibilities? Nonsense, I say, nonsense. Do ethics require agency? It would seem so, right? In order to have done something wrong, you ought to have had the capacity to do something other than what you did. If you were forced, if you were coerced, and yet we're still putting child soldiers into jail. So maybe agency isn't as big a factor as we thought. Relativism versus universality. This is one that really bugs me. And again, we get back to the whole rule-based thing. Do rights vary by context? again, you talk to people like Hooks, forgot the first name, Bell Hooks, Carol Gilligan, and others. Ethics very much depend on context. There aren't universal principles. You look at the relation between the caregiver and the recipient of care, and whatever that relation is, that determines what the right action is. And the right action is actually a result of kind of a negotiation, but not a negotiation because that's too businessy, a conversation or a communication or an interaction, or even the relationship of dependency between the carer and the recipient, where both are equal participants. That's what determines what right is. Or on the other hand, right is right for everyone. Stealing is wrong no matter who you are. Killing is always wrong unless you have the right paperwork. There are universal principles. You can see my cynicism sometimes showing through, but it's a cynicism that's derived from studying this. But the cynicism, I will say this, the cynicism comes with, to me, a rather deeper appreciation of ethics in the sense of, and it's not part of the slides here, I don't see ethics as a bad thing. I don't see it as creating obligations. I don't see it as onerous. I see ethics as a mechanism that tells us how we can do things that are right and are good. So the way I phrase it, ethics is a source of joy, not agony. It tells me what good I can do in the world. I like that approach. And that's how I feel about ethics. The professional world disagrees. The professional world has defined codes of conduct. Sorry about the repeated text on the slide there. I meant to have something different. But the document there, that the link is a link to something I created called the Ethical Codes Reader. And it's about 75 different ethical codes from different professions that I dug up and analyzed. And the reason why I did this is a guy called Luciano Floridi, not in this article, in this article, said that everybody has a common agreement on what ethics are. And my response is that's nonsense. So my work here, I also wrote an article, but the main thing is the Ethical Codes Reader. There is no single ethical principle that can be found, and I can prove this, and I have proved this, that can be found in all ethical codes. None. There is not one. Now, sometimes it sounds like there's some, right? Like honesty. Everybody should be honest. That's a universal value, isn't it? Well, as it turns out, no. As a general vague principle, sure, but every ethical code admits of exceptions and different kinds of ways of not being honest, not being open, not being transparent, right? Do you always tell the patient that they're going to die tomorrow? No, maybe not, especially if it would cause the patient to die today, right? Do you tell a 10-year-old that their parent is a mass murderer? Maybe wait till they're older. You know, there's all kinds of justification for not telling the truth. Why didn't you tell the truth? Well, it would have made me look bad. Or the organizational favorite, why didn't you tell the truth? Well, it would have reflected poorly on the institution. So that's what the analysis of codes of conduct tells me. It's interesting as well, looking through all of these, they're all rules-based. They're all based on good old-fashioned artificial intelligence, as though a bunch of people could sit down in a room and decide what the rules are for good conduct. I sit on a research ethics board, so I get practical experience on this on a regular basis. And we have a rough and ready understanding of what's ethical. In Canada, we have the Tri-Council Ethical Guidelines, which is in my analysis of the codes. And at NRC, we're formally governed by that. So, that's our way of being able to give an explanation for why something would be rejected. But that would never actually be the reason why something was rejected. This is the way it works, and this is the way it works in any profession. We're all experienced scientists. Well, I shouldn't say we're all experienced scientists. Some of us are scientists, others are business people, others are ethicists, but we're all experienced in our respective and related fields. We look at the proposal and we can tell pretty much just by recognizing it, yeah, there's something wrong with this, right? This one should not fly. And then we do the more detailed analysis and we figure out why did that tweak that reaction in our mind, right? But it's never a tick the box kind of thing. At least it's not for me, and I don't believe it is for the other members of the board, because you can't make evaluations of complex subjects like ethics, like anything, by ticking the boxes. You should not. And the checklist approach, which is what it's called, it's good for making sure you don't overlook things. It's good for making sure that you're not bringing in some kind of prejudice, that you're not thinking about into the conversation. When it's funny, when an airplane is crashing, the pilot and the co-pilot kind of know what's going wrong, right? And it's not just the fact that they're plummeting toward the earth, right? They have a sense of other things too. But they do go through the checklist, and they go through the checklist and they do it methodically just in case they've missed something. And that's why they do it. But even more, when the plane is coming in for a routine landing and everything is fine, they go through the checklist every time. And they don't just have some guy going through the checklist. It's one person does and the other person confirms. One person does and the other person confirms to make sure they're not forgetting anything. And that's also how they do the work in an operating theater, in medicine, etc. Anything important or complex, that's how they do it. But that's the mechanism to make sure that they don't make mistakes. That's not the mechanism that tells them how they're doing it correctly. The people landing the airplane can recognize if it's not landing properly long before they hit the thing on the checklist. And that's how we do ethics, at least in the Research Ethics Board. And so we're kind of doing ethics. We're kind of landing airplanes. We're kind of doing operations in a hospital by doing pattern recognition, by recognizing what's working, what's not, by following the same procedure we did in the past, but being careful to be aware of the context, the possible exceptions, and if we're really good, keeping in mind care and the interaction between us and the people that we're working with. So far, so good? All right, getting some nods. So, codes of conduct, we'll talk about I hate this word. Beneficence, whatever, or non-maleficence, or autonomy. It's funny, right? It's doing good and not doing harm. They couldn't just say it like that. No. Autonomy, which is fascinating. I could go on all day about autonomy. Justice, but what is justice? Is justice fairness, or is justice following the rules? Yeah, who cares? You're just doing AI ethics. And these days, explicability. So those are the things that you'll hear, but you should understand that this is people trying to come up with a formula to express something that is actually incredibly complex and based on, well, massively parallel processing that recognizes patterns and phenomena. You're getting the full dose of connectivism here. Some more popular considerations, and again, this shows how different the different approaches to ethics are. This is the World Health Organization consensus on ethics in AI. Their principles are sustainability, inclusivity and equity, accountability, protect autonomy, human well-being, whatever that is, remember, traipsing through the fields, and transparency. A set of principles I've never seen an institution follow in my life, but we'll leave that aside. More, this is Geeks for Geeks, fairness and non-harm, transparency, everybody loves transparency, nobody does it. Data protection and security, which is missing from so many AI ethics statements. Explainability, we're going to come back to that one. And then human autonomy and control, we're going to come back to that one too. Imagine managing in an environment like that. Imagine managing according to those principles. Using AI. Okay. I know I don't want to go over my time, and I'm sensitive to that because I see Marty looking worried. And now she's trying not to look worried. Okay, so as I said before, when we use AI, we don't just push a button and use AI. It fits into everything else. It's pernicious that way, but it's so useful that way. People think about, okay, I'm going to interact with ChatGPT, and that's me using AI. That's like using an internal combustion engine by playing with the gas a bit and making it go vroom vroom vroom, but that's not using an engine. AI fits into our other works and processes and functions somewhere between a tool, which it is, and a forgetful but skilled assistant, which it is. And I get very frustrated with AI. Don't you remember, we are not using event listeners because it's a dynamic environment, and you can't use event listeners in a dynamic environment. Silly. But it never learns. So, AI is pattern recognition. Again, resource augmented generation. I'll mention it to you so you know what RAG means. If you don't know what RAG means, now you can impress your friends. Prompt engineering, very briefly, and then I'll talk about AI in the loop. So, AI is a pattern recognizer. You should see some AI. Not this. This. No, not that. Silly person. Are you able to see my browser? Awesome. Okay, this is a Nano GPT. We can zoom in on it. This is an actual artificial intelligence. There's the input, they call these input vectors. And then these matrices, all right? And we go on through layers and layers of processing, just like the layers and layers of a human brain, except these are mechanical. Layers and layers of processing, and then here's the output, which is the, well, prediction, pattern, whatever it is, right? But it's the regularity, basically, that has been found to be the most important after going through all of that processing. Now, let's see if I can make this work. Come on. Okay. There we go. Now, do your thing. There we go. It just runs the data through all of these layer after layer after layer. These are all very simple mathematical calculations. And specifically, they're forms of matrix algebra, adding matrices together, multiplying matrices together in order to apply a similar function or value to an array or vector of input phenomena. That's all it is. Addition and multiplication on simple numbers, all in their own little box. That's all AI is. Nothing fancy. What I think is really cool, though, and I don't want to get this wrong. Oh, the K bias, that's the sensitivity, the weights, those are the strength of the connection between the individual node. And so you apply the bias to the weights, and then you get your output vectors. See? And there they are. The big thing in generative GPT, generalized pre-trained AI. Oh, so it's not going to highlight that for me. Come back here. Here it is. Now, it's kind of hard to see, but this layer is called self-attention. And what it's doing is looking at itself. So you get some values and some weights, and you run through the Q vectors, and you get your output, and then your output feeds back into your input, and you get some values and you get some weights. So the idea is the AI is paying attention to what it's doing. And that's the basis of the famous paper that launched GPTs. It was titled "Attention is All You Need." Turns out attention is not all you need, but what it does is it allows you, instead of just predicting from one word to the next word, you can predict from a longer set of words, paying attention to the whole set of words to the next word. So instead of saying cows moo, you can say properly prepared and cooked cows taste delicious. And that's the difference attention makes. Pretty cool, eh? I think this is cool. And all it is you're taking some numbers in these boxes and putting them over in those boxes. That's all it is. And connectivism is the idea that we can do this in society. Here are our people. Well, no, those aren't people. Here are social connections, links between people on the internet, say. Here are the outcomes of those connections, and here are the people that have been connected. And what we're trying to do when we build anything, a company, an institution, a society, is get this organization right. And the trick is we don't have somebody building GPTs for us, but we've got lots of mechanisms in our brains and in society that do things like pay attention to context. We just need to recognize how important these things are. Similarly, people talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? If you start dropping nodes from this network because you don't like what color they are, your network stops working, right? If you stop allowing connections between nodes in the network because you don't like the words that they're saying, the network stops working. If you forget your past, the network stops working. All of these things, right? If all of your input is the same or comes from the same source or is importantly biased, the network stops working. That's why diversity, equity, and inclusion are important, right? It's because they're nice. It's not, in my mind, even because every person is valuable in and of themselves. This is a story about why they're valuable. They're valuable because they're part of all of this. And it's kind of weird, right? You can't get at this kind of thing by looking at the individual person in isolation, just as you can't get at the mechanism of human thought, creativity, reason, passion, care, etc., by looking at an individual neuron. You have to consider everything together. People don't know this yet. They're gonna eventually realize it. Or the other thing is the network will stop working. And then we go back to small, ineffective networks. So that's a nano GPT. Here's GPT-2. It's the same thing, only bigger. Here's GPT-3, and there isn't a GPT-4, but it's the same thing, only bigger. And that's what the AI, this is why they're spending billions of dollars, because each one of these, this down here, costs about $10,000. And that's why they're spending billions of dollars. The only other way to fix it is to, oops, I've lost, oh, there's my nano, is to improve the efficiency. And I just saw today information about the Chinese AI, I forget what it was called, and apparently they've improved this part of the AI and then scaled it up. So that's pretty cool. But that's how the progress is going to happen. So the people who are saying, AI progress is stalled, don't get AI. So let's come back to the slides. This isn't what I was introducing today, by the way. That's just something I saw yesterday. Resource augmented generation is how you do the attention bit. Here, this is graph-based resource augmented generation that's diagrammed here, but you can also do it with PDFs or pretty much any documents. Basically, what you do is you're giving your AI prompts, but before you give it any prompts, you feed it a whole bunch of data. All of Wikipedia, say, because it's not that big, not to an AI, or graph data, statistical data from all of Canadian history, such as it is. All the employee training manuals in your institution, even if they're not really applied anymore, put them in. The code of conduct, whatever, right? So, was it resource or retrieval? Oh, I forget. It might be retrieval augmented generation. It's RAG, anyways, which is a really bad name. But, so anyhow, you put all of that in, and that's the context in which the questions or the tasks that you give to the AI are performed in. So it's sort of like giving AI a whole bunch of facts that really matter in order to generate its output. I think somebody said to me, I'm working with them on a project, and right now I have an hour a month that I can do. And they said, could you just give me a quick chat bot that will answer all the questions about our project? And like, I know how to do it, but it might take more than an hour. Management. Prompt engineering. There's a whole website from OpenAI and prompt engineering. People immediately turned it into a science. The real engineers are having fits. They've gone apoplectic because this new form of engineering emerged out of nowhere and suddenly became a profession. Again, it's hocus pocus. It's just the principles of asking good questions and giving good directions. You would apply that to anything, employees, people, whatever, include details in your query to get more relevant answers. Well, yeah, if I asked you what is right, that's not a very good question. If I asked you what is right if I have a starving baby and there's some food here, use delimiters to clearly indicate distinct part of the input. Otherwise your sentences all run together. Specify the steps required because the AIs aren't always able to figure that out. Provide examples. All of these make sense. You don't have to do them all at once. When I work with AI, and I do quite a bit of work with AI, let's see. I do enough work with AI that it has its own link. So here's all the stuff that I've been, and there's more, right? But you'll notice.
Stephen,
Yeah.
I'm gonna interrupt for just a sec. I am watching the clock a little bit more now. And I just want to say to the group, get ready with some questions. And Stephen, if you could get us to the management or what we
Sure.
call leadership, for us, they're a bit different, but to see what you say about this. I have
Gotcha.
a
All right.
pattern of questions that I want to ask you, but I'm going to give it to the students first. And if you can get us to that, because we do have a commitment to start on time and end on time. So
that's
I would
fair
love
enough,
to
yeah.
have you carry on, but if I could just cue the students to get ready with,
Well,
so everybody has at least one question, and ask if you can, spend another 10, maybe 15 minutes.
Guaranteed, I will not go over 10 or 15 minutes. I will not go
Thank
over
you.
10 minutes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a good sense of what's left. So anyhow, yeah, so here, it's a lot of this is just me asking questions. So okay, we're doing this, and here I'm giving some, but there's no point doing this if you're doing that. And so there's a lot of interaction that happens. It's not a magic thing where you get all the prompts right and then you get the output. Real people working with I are going through this back and forth process. And to bring it back to management, kind of the same thing, right? Anyhow, I won't linger on this. Okay. Oh, there's controls down here. All right. Practical AI. This is what I was talking about this afternoon. I launched a new product. So let me log into it. So this is a personal learning environment. I finally built one. It finally works mostly. So I released that this afternoon. It's open source. I hope people are able to use it. I had all of 18 people in my launch, so it's not going to be the great explosion of change that I'd hoped that it would be, but nonetheless. So one of the things it does is I can read from various accounts, or I can find stuff from Google or open educational resources, etc. So here I am, I'm reading reading posts from my Mastodon feed. What you don't see is behind the scenes, there's an AI working. I've just connected it into the guts of this thing, translating all the text. So I don't need to worry about if people are writing in some other language like Slovenian that I don't understand. I actually do follow somebody who writes in Slovenian, so it's not a made up example. I just read what they wrote here in English. That's AI. I don't know why we don't have that, but now we do. Another little thing that I did, it works better in Blue Sky than in Mastodon. So I have Blue Sky connected up. Now, in both Mastodon and Blue Sky, in chat discussions generally, you have threads. I'm not going to use one of Don Lemon's threads because they go on forever and they'll break my system. I'll use one of Marshall Kirkpatrick's. Oh, there's Lawrence writes in Slovenian. You'd never know. Here we go. So here's a thread, a discussion. I have a little control here. So normally there'd be a little spinny icon there, but I haven't implemented that yet. But there we go. This is a summary of the discussion generated by ChatGPT. So I wrote some instructions in my code and then sent it this thread, and it came back with this summary, which I can now use. I can feed it forward and do whatever I want with it. So I have various things that I can do with this. The neat thing about this application, at least in my mind, is I can take content from different sources and put them all into a single writing environment, and the system will keep track of the references for me so that I don't have to, because I hate dealing with references. I'm sure all of you do too. And then I can publish this I can save it, or I can post it to Mastodon, or I can publish this as a blog either on WordPress or in half an hour, which is Blogger. And I have plans, of course, to add all kinds of publishing. But just some neat things here. Let's load again. Right now, this works for only one person, but I can load Etherpad, which is a collaborative editing tool, which means multiple people can edit the same document at once. Another thing I can do when I load is I can load a template, or I can generate a new template. Typically, you know, maybe a case study or a lab report or something like that, but I can actually put in any sort of template. Talk to management students, and I'll generate that template. It'll show up in the text window, I hope. And it takes a little bit of time. There's the spinny wheel actually working here. And again, we have ChatGPT working behind the scenes, and there's my template. I don't know why it opened in a completely new window like that. It's not supposed to do that, but I'll just copy this. Oh, wow. And it's supposed to load in here like that, but I'm having issues with it. So, and there's my top template. I did not actually do this today. I just sat down and thought about what I'd like to talk about. So this is how AI is going to be used, well, in the future, right? It's going to be in your applications. In fact, even as I was preparing these slides, Microsoft has put Copilot in everything, and it wanted to take over the process of preparing my slides for all of you. I did not want it to do that. So, practical AI. And we think about, you know, there's all sorts of people talking about keeping humans in the loop, and yeah, but really we should be thinking about the concept of AI in the loop, right? We're still doing the human things that we're doing. Managers are still doing the management things that the managers are doing. But the AI is there embedded in our tools helping us out. So what do we learn about management from all of this? 4 topics, 3 minutes. First of all, self-organization. I wonder if this will work. This is a murmuration. You may have seen this before, maybe not. These birds are flying in formation. There is no head bird. Trust me. Even when geese fly in a V, the goose at the front of the V is not in charge, right? And in fact, the reason why they do that is it's easier for the other geese to fly behind the one goose. So one goose flies until it gets tired, it drops, and another goose takes its place. Cyclists do that too, actually. That's an important principle of working with AI generally. Did I just close my, no, I didn't. All right. AI works like this. People using AI work like this. People organized as networks rather than hierarchies and following rules and principles work like this. Another way of looking at it, management is modeling. My theory of education is very simple. To learn is to practice and reflect. To teach is to model and demonstrate. And what are you modeling? You're modeling stuff like this, right? I launched my Cumulus project. Here are the kinds of things that need to be done: testing, features, application, development, documentation. This is a pretty good list for any educational technology project, not just mine. But the point here is not so much to assign these things as to, in some way, get people to do them. See the difference, right? because assigning people to do things is management by power. And management by power is the ethical principle of might makes right. And is that an ethical principle you subscribe to? Well, it might be, right? But you should understand that that's what you're doing. But probably you want something more interactive. And so you're going to find people who want to do these things. How do you get them to want to do these things? You get them to want to see the outcome of whatever they're producing. It's the story of the head of NASA meets a janitor pushing a broom in one of the labs. And the head of NASA didn't recognize them, obviously. Just a janitor, right? And you've probably heard the story. I see some people with recognition in their eyes. You can see recognition if you know what you're looking for. The head of NASA says, well, hello, nice to see you. What do you do here? And the janitor looks at him with pride and says, I'm helping put a man on the moon. They have to want to do whatever it is. If they want the outcome, they don't mind what the task is. That's my feeling. Explainability, I'm not going to talk about this because it's too long, but the whole idea of explainability is a mash. Really, explaining is ascribing a cause to something, but you saw the diagram of GPT. Which one of those particular nodes was responsible for the outcome? Well, none of them were, obviously. Even the organization could have changed and still produced the same outcome. You don't have a single causal input creating a single causal output. And even if you did, what explains something depends on the point of view that you have. Ultimately, organization in an AI world comes down to self-governance and self-reliance. The tools give people tons of power, and especially to interact and relate to each other. That makes the organization stronger, but it means that management by rules, management by coercion no longer works. I was 2 minutes over my promise of 10 minutes. I'm sorry, Moody. That's her. Oh, I can stop sharing now.
Thank you so much. I have a few pages of notes here. Okay, yes, thank you. Let's give our speaker a hand here. We can do that electronically. Yeah, or we can do it like this.
It was nice of you to come back on and let me see your faces, because seeing your faces is a really important way for me to be able to, I mean, I would never require it, because how could I? But it helps a lot.
Well, if it was helpful, then we should do it. We have a rule, just as you've suggested, that it is voluntary, of course, but that we don't want to distract the speaker, so we tend to turn off. But you requested we turn on. So as long as I wasn't stretching, I was happy to leave my camera on, but I have to. You know, we can't sit here all day and then all night and stay healthy.
Oh, yeah.
So, wow, there is so much to talk about. I have a list, but I really want to give the time to, I almost said to the kids, I apologize. You are not at all my children. I mean, I would be happy if you were, and I'm sure I'm old enough to for all of you to be my children, but I want to give the opportunity to you. This group requested you to come and talk to us, Stephen. So, and I'm so glad that that happened. Okay.
I was going to say, now they regret it.
So I have, I'll stop explaining the process and say we've got Galera and then Young and Nicole. And so that we can stay within the time, please try to be succinct with your questions, and we'll give the time to Stephen to answer. Galera, please go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I love a presentation that questions every little that I know, and I have billions of questions, so but I'll keep it very brief. I start with the last one, that explainability. Does that relate to rules of ethics or management? And do you distinguish between management and leadership? That's one question, and because I may not have an opportunity to ask my question, I'm going to ask my biggest question. When you started the presentation, you said, if you're only interacting with ChatGPT, don't consider yourself an AI user. So I'm thinking with my now I know very little knowledge of ethics and my engagement with ChatGPT, because I don't build it, am I considered an AI user?
That was one of my less well-phrased things. I mean, obviously, if you're using ChatGPT in the screen, you're an AI user because you're using AI. TBD. But using AI is more than just using ChatGPT. And there are other ways that you use it. If you drive in your car and you use adaptive cruise control, you're using AI. So there's so many ways to use AI. I, by the way, love adaptive cruise control and won't drive a car without it now. Leadership and management are different things, but they are related. Leadership is about setting examples, modeling, demonstrating. What you're trying to do is give people patterns that they will either consciously or subconsciously follow and emulate. Of course, they have to look up to you in order to, or at least respect you or care about how you respond in order to emulate. But that's what leadership is. And I try to do that because they won't let me manage things. Management, though, is a function. It's an important function. I find that a lot of management is based on results rather than directives. And there's this whole school of results-oriented management where you're dealing with key performance indicators and all of that, whole structure there. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Those are all based on principles of causation. That's a problem, right? Because you begin to manage to the performance indicators instead of to the outcome. You can't describe the outcome in terms of performance indicators. You know that, but the people who are looking at these performance indicators are looking for something different than you're trying to do. For example, you're trying to educate a person. Somebody else is trying to get the accounts to balance. Somebody else is trying to show a successful project in order to get reelected, etc. Right? So all of these performance indicators, all of these outcomes are different depending on your perspective. So there's no particular set of cause and effect that applies to your work. You may think there is. If you think there is, then I'm here to tell you that you're probably wrong. Again, context matters, right? Maybe your workplace, there really is a cause and effect chain, but probably there isn't, which is why it's very rarely the case that you can apply an effect, a management technique, a management theory, and get or apply a cause and get an effect, right? Even in the same environment with the same people at different times, the same cause will produce different effects. And so managers need to be aware of that, and they need to be aware of that not because cause and effect are false, but because we're dealing with complex systems where the variables aren't rules and principles and objects, but those little circles of interacting nodes, either in the person's brain or in the office or in society at large, and you can't always predict what they're going to come out with. So Douglas Rushkoff used to talk about surfing rather than managing. And management is an awful lot like that. Sorry, that was longer than I would have liked. It was a complex question.
Thank you. Hayang,
Yeah,
please.
yeah. First, I really appreciate your informative, passionate presentation. Um, I really like this ethical approach toward the AI to emphasize use AI responsibly. My question is just out of my curiosity. Can you introduce nano chat GPT applications to distance education? Because I only heard today is the first time nano GPT. So yeah, I'm so interested in it. So how can you no you can you introduce nano GPT applications for our distance education?
The short answer to that is no. And the reason for that is it's even before GPT-1, right? It's a very early prototype to demonstrate the feasibility of the concept. But we get the effects, the pattern recognition, only when we're dealing with large amounts of data and then therefore systems that can deal with these large amounts of data. Having said that, okay, so now I'm talking about that particular model. Are there smaller models that we can apply to distance education applications? The answer to that is yeah, probably, but I don't know which ones, because it depends a lot on the application and a lot on the model. There's already a ton of different AI models. They all have different strengths and they all have different weaknesses. What we want long term is a way to have AI, as they say, on the edge. In other words, AI on our devices rather than in great big systems based in, I don't know, Louisiana, which is where they're building a data center the size of Manhattan, just as an aside. We want it on our own computers. And Microsoft's coming out with what they call Windows operating system plus or something. It's Copilot on your laptop. I have no idea how well that'll work. I'll bet you it's connected to the central data center. There are some models that have been created by Facebook, Llama, that can run on your laptop. I have run them on my laptop. They're kind of slow, even on my laptop, which is kind of fast. So not there yet, but we're going to get there. So right now, you're looking at server-based AI right now.
Thank you.
Good question.
Thank you. Great question. Yes, thank you both. Nicole.
Actually, my question is kind of related to that. And I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit about the environmental impact of AI and what the hope is in that area. It's scary right now.
I ran the numbers. I actually published was it a blog post? It might have been a blog post about that. If you have a cup of coffee every day, you're creating the same environmental impact as AI. That's what the numbers say. It might be that having a cup of coffee every day is environmentally irresponsible. There's an argument for that. Coffee is made in Colombia. It requires roasting. It requires a lot of water and energy. It requires underpaid laborers working in harsh conditions to pick the beans. It requires shipping. It requires brewing. And then there's the milk that I add to my coffee. Anyhow, but I still like my coffee. AI is the same. It's like, well, it's not exactly the same, but it's within an order of magnitude, right? Your impact on the earth using AI is no different than your impact on the earth drinking a cup of coffee. And most of that impact is based on creating the models in the first place, not using the models. So I'm pretty sanguine about it. They talk about oh, AI burns so much oil. Well, yeah, it does if your electricity is produced by oil. I live in Ontario, as other people do, where Ontario is proud to tell you that I forget the number, I think it's like 97% of all of our electricity is produced by sources other than oil. Hydroelectricity, wind power, there's windmills just out there. Solar, there's a huge solar farm just down the road in St. Isidore, and another one just up the road a bit near Riceville. And if that's what's powering our AI, what's the big deal, right? So I'm not worried about the environmental impact. I'm more worried about the environmental impact of cars, of return to office mandates, which are imposed on public services for no good reason, of Tim Hortons wrappers, certainly of clear-cut logging. All of these are bigger things to worry about than the environmental impact of AI. And again, not an opinion. This is what the numbers say. If the numbers change, my opinion will change. But that's what the numbers are. And so I'm not worried about it.
Another great question. Thank you. And yes, we could talk for so long. Stephen, I'm gonna talk to you about coming to Cider to do similar presentation there. Stephanie, over to you, please. And this unfortunately has to be our last question, so we have time to talk about assignments. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. I'm starting to learn about AI coaching and AI tutoring and AI providing feedback to students in post-secondary education. And I have my hesitations, and I don't know how to trust AI. But it seems like it's already within some of the applications or the products that we're starting to use. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that. Like, are AI tutors ready, and are they a good thing and something that we should be using?
I'd say they're not ready for prime time. I'd say they're getting very close. The weakness of the large language models, which is what these are almost all invariably using, is the data that's going in. And in particular, they have no real world experience. They know nothing about cause and effect except for the words cause and effect and how they're used in human language, which is to say sloppily. They should know the entire contents of the Canadian Rubber Company Handbook of Chemistry and Physics so that they know what the chemical properties of things are, but they don't. So they don't know. They don't know that carbon is a molecule that has certain properties, except when people have said that in sentences. So not ready for prime time. The other side of that is everyone in the industry knows this. The only people who don't know this are the people who are criticizing AI. So you shouldn't be using AI. I mean, well, no, let me say that differently. You can use it, just don't trust it, right? It's like, you know, in a doctoral program. Oh, I was going to say maybe you have graduate students, but no, you are one. You're Marty. You may have graduate students, right? Your graduate students may be providing assistance to undergraduates. They're pretty capable, and they can probably do a good job, but they require supervision because they're still learning what they're doing. And so that's Marty's job, is the supervision. And actually, I shouldn't denigrate graduate students. Graduate students are actually still better tutors than AI. But they won't be forever. AI will be better tutors for a variety of reasons. And for one thing, an AI is going to get to know the student far better than any tutor ever could, far better than any professor ever could. But interestingly, if it's done right, the AI will be working on behalf of the student in the student's interest. That's the key issue here, is who does the AI work for? And that's where the real question, it's not going to be a question of competence or trust. It's going to be who is the AI, whose interests is the AI serving? Well, that's a question you should ask all the time anyways, of anyone who gives you advice, because people who give advice have two reasons for do that: to help you and to help themselves, and they're not always consistent. I hope that answers the question. It's not the best answer I could have given, but it's what I have with the time I have.
I love your optimism because people don't use language like information explosion and the complexity of diversity and so on. But given back to when we put a yoke on an ox, we had to create more capacity. And that for me is what we're doing. I felt it in a lot of what you said to us. Thank you so much, Stephen. The words don't do it. I so appreciate you saying yes. And I would ask my students to use whatever technology they want, or to use your microphones to say thank you to Stephen. And I'm going to be in touch because I have things I'd love to discuss with you further. And I, if you're willing, I can think of problems that we have, I see around me, that you might be able to help us solve regarding understanding AI and making good use of it. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here and making time for us. It was very rich, and I will be listening to it again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Okay, I'll send you a link to the recording.
Okay.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Thanks.
Best of luck. Hope you pass.
They will. Okay, I'm going to stop our recording. Not because I don't